August 29th, 2005. The day the world watched one of America's greatest cities drown. The day Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, leaving behind devastation that scarred generations. More than just a storm, Katrina exposed the fragility of human life, the cracks in government response, and the resilience of ordinary people who refused to give up.
Today we take you inside the heart of Katrina, the storm, the chaos, the survival, and the lessons America can never afford to forget. New Orleans, Louisiana, a city of jazz, culture, and history. A city that lived below sea level, protected by levees built to hold back the mighty waters of the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain. For decades, experts warned if a powerful hurricane ever hit directly, the city could be lost.
In late August of 2005, that nightmare began to unfold. On August 23rd, a tropical depression formed over the Bahamas. Within days, it strengthened, tearing across Florida and entering the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The storm grew stronger and stronger. Its name was Katrina. By August 28th, Katrina had become a monster Category 5 hurricane, one of the strongest storms ever recorded in the Gulf. Winds roared at 175 miles per hour. Entire neighborhoods in Mississippi and Louisiana braced for the unimaginable.
The mayor of New Orleans, Ray Nagin, issued a mandatory evacuation. For many, that meant packing up and fleeing. But for tens of thousands, evacuation wasn't an option. They had no car, no money, no place to go. The city's poorest were left behind, praying the levees would hold. August 29th. The storm makes landfall near Burris, Louisiana. Winds scream through the city, ripping roofs from homes, shattering windows, and tossing cars like toys. In Mississippi, entire coastal towns are wiped from the map. But the real disaster was only just beginning, because it wasn't the wind that doomed New Orleans, it was water.
By mid-morning, the levees began to fail. The Industrial Canal, the 17th Street Canal, the London Avenue Canal. One by one, walls meant to protect the city crumbled under the pressure of storm surge. Water poured in, not a trickle, not a flood, but a tidal wave rushing into neighborhoods. Within hours, 80% of New Orleans was underwater. Streets turned into rivers. Families scrambled onto rooftops. Thousands were trapped.
Angela Johnson, a single mother of 3, didn't own a car. When the evacuation order came, she had nowhere to go. She decided to ride out the storm at home. When the levee broke, water filled their small house within minutes. Angela grabbed her children, ages 9, 7, and 3, and rushed into the attic. As the water kept rising, she kicked open the roof, pulling her kids onto the shingles. For 2 days they sat there, surrounded by filthy floodwaters under the burning sun. No food, no water. Just hope that someone would come. Helicopters flew overhead, but they passed by. Rescuers couldn't reach everyone. The Johnsons, like thousands of others, felt forgotten. Angela later said, "I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of my children dying in front of me." Her story was one of thousands. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, children, clinging to life in a city abandoned by its own government. New Orleans descended into chaos. The Superdome, once a symbol of football pride, became a shelter of last resort. Nearly 30,000 people crowded inside. The roof peeled open from the winds. Toilets overflowed. There was little food, little water, and almost no medical care. At the convention center, another 20,000 gathered. Days passed with no rescue.
People screamed for help. Elderly residents died waiting. Babies cried without milk.
The images shocked the world. Americans stranded, begging for rescue in their own country. The wealthiest nation on earth brought to its knees. And in the silence of those days, anger grew. Survivors asked, where was FEMA? Where was the National Guard? Why had help not come?
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, was overwhelmed. Mistakes piled up. Supplies sat unused. Buses to evacuate people arrived too late. President George W. Bush, visiting the disaster zone days later, faced harsh criticism. One senator called it a national disgrace. Another said, our government failed its people when they needed it most. The truth was undeniable. The disaster was not just natural, it was man-made. Warnings about weak levees had been ignored for years. Evacuation plans for the poor had never been made. Katrina revealed the painful inequalities of America.
But amid the chaos, heroes emerged. Ordinary neighbors rescued each other in small boats, later called the Cajun Navy. Firefighters, police officers, Coast Guard pilots worked nonstop, pulling thousands from rooftops. Churches across the country opened their doors to evacuees. Angela Johnson and her children, they were finally spotted by a volunteer boat crew on the third day, exhausted, dehydrated, traumatized, but alive.
These acts of courage showed the other side of America: resilience, compassion, and unity. In the end, Hurricane Katrina killed at least 1,800 people. Over 1 million were displaced. Entire communities, especially in New Orleans, were destroyed. The lower Ninth Ward, where the Johnsons lived, was almost completely wiped out. Black communities, already struggling with poverty, were hit hardest. Many never returned.
The cost? More than $125 billion. But money couldn't measure the pain. Families torn apart, homes lost forever, a city scarred. Katrina forced America to confront hard truths about race, about poverty, about disaster preparedness. In the years since, billions have been spent rebuilding levees and improving response systems. The Army Corps of Engineers redesigned flood protection for New Orleans. FEMA reformed its policies.
But ask the survivors, and many will tell you, the real scars are emotional. Children who grew up with nightmares of drowning, parents who lost everything, families who never saw loved ones again. Angela Johnson, years later, said, "We lost our home, but not our hope. My kids survived. That's what matters." Her words reflect the spirit of New Orleans itself, a city that came back, scarred but alive. The music returned, the parades returned, the people rebuilt. Hurricane Katrina was more than a storm. It was a test of infrastructure, a test of government, a test of humanity. And while the storm revealed deep failures, it also revealed deep strength, the courage of families like the Johnsons, the generosity of strangers, the resilience of New Orleans. Today, when we remember Katrina, we don't just remember tragedy. We remember survival. We remember that in the darkest moments, people can rise. Because in the end, Katrina did not destroy New Orleans. It reminded the world that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the human spirit endures.